Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome once again to another live stream. This live stream is with Stephanie Mitchell-Hughes called Resilience 2.0. Originally, it documented her full rise and climb up again as she coped getting through hard places, coming through the other side and trying to learn the lessons so as not to make similar mistakes. Also coming up against long COVID and also social inequality, all of which Stephanie fights very strongly to try and get a better understanding of. Now, today's topic is something that really about what's in the zeitgeist, what's here and now, which is that the call to institutionalize individuals with a mental health condition is a red herring. What do you mean by that, Stephanie?
What I mean by it is that simply and automatically placing individuals who have a mental health condition back behind the gates and the locked doors of mental health institutions is not treatment. It undermines all of the progress that has been made and really does not help those of us who have a mental health condition. It hides us away behind those doors.
Yes, and the treatment for a lot of these things usually involves social integration, being cared for within the community. So hiding away the very people who have an affliction of whatever sort, although it might provide them a safe space, certainly won't provide a long-term solution. And also there's a wider issue, I think, Stephanie. Historically, mental institutions, mental hospitals, or whatever you want to call them, have often been the place where political opponents like to throw those they feared that aren't towing the line, and also anyone who doesn't quite fit in, those who are partially disabled, those with a stutter, those who Tourette's, those who maybe think in a reactionary manner. A very good place to hide them away is that. And if you start routinely throwing people who are deemed of having a mental issue of one sort or another, I mean labeled by them as having that, before you know it, you're going to have people being picked up off the streets. Oh my goodness, that's already happening.
Well, and it doesn't help. It just simply does not help, and it is just not treatment. I mean, no. I think about myself and my own conditions that I've been really vocal about discussing and doing so to challenge and disrupt stigma, to educate people, to show that there are individuals out here like me who talk about what it means to live with a mental health condition, who actively do that and go on and accomplish a great deal and contribute to society and not take away from society. We have right now, if there's a current call of basically taking away the constitutional protections that individuals who have a mental health condition have, take away their rights that they have, that any and every other person has, which then undermines their humanity. And in the current climate that we're in right now, you have the Medicaid cuts. And one of the big concerns that we had with respect to Medicaid cuts was the impact that they would have on individuals who have mental health conditions, who rely upon Medicaid to take care of themselves and the mental health condition that they have. And they're able to do that successfully. If Medicaid, they're not able to access Medicaid and continue to do that, then they run the very real risk of falling into the crack, start falling between the cracks, wind up homeless wind up out on the street unmedicated. And then these things, it just snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. And that just it's not helpful to them. It's not helpful to their families. And it's just not helpful to society, because they were contributing and out here in the world just be living like everybody else.
Right.
That when mental health hospitals in the United States, I don't know about in your neck of the woods, Gareth, but in the United States, the call to close mental health hospitals as they existed on a large scale, when those mental health hospitals were closed, they were supposed to be replaced by a quote robust mental health community mental health system.
Right.
And that simply has not happened. It's not happened on scale. And so it's one of those things where we have sort of pieced this all together, and slapped it together and made something subject to politics and the policies and beliefs of political leaders, when it's just really about helping people and equipping and empowering people to take care of themselves. It's just that simple. And so we have in this country a huge lack of, across the United States, of psychiatrists. Those are the individuals who manage medications for people who are mentally ill.
Right.
I went through a period about 9 years ago where I tried to find a replacement for my psychiatrist who had retired, and just no matter what, could not find one. And looked for years, and then I ran into a situation where I hit a crisis point, and it took almost 2 weeks, and this is with the help of my then insurance company, me calling every place that I could think of to find another psychiatrist. And that's because there's a huge lack. The other thing, an issue that we are lacking in terms of building robust mental health communities so that people can get treatment and take care of themselves, is supportive housing. We don't have enough housing. And this is, again, a nationwide issue. And so the solution is not to simply lock everybody who has a mental health condition away, or label someone as having a mental health condition and locking them away. Of course, mental health hospitals should exist. They need to exist for forensic reasons. You have people who are so mentally ill,
Right.
who cannot be out in the community, who pose a risk of harm. But that determination is made by trained behavioral health experts. It's something that's made in conjunction and in collaboration with other people and other entities to ensure that the person in question should be there. Not because someone has decided all of a sudden that if you are living with depression, if you are living with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, we're just going to put you behind the walls and throw away the key. And that simply is inhumane. And it can't happen. It should not happen. And it's like, I was saying before we came on today, I started telling my story in 2013. And my
Right.
mantra has been, no apology, no retreat, no shame, and no surrender. And given all that I have accomplished, and given the current climate that we're in, I would not be telling the truth if I did not say, there is, admit to some trepidation on my part in continuing to be candid. But I'm being candid not because of myself. I'm being candid because because you can't just be written off and tucked away or dismissed as not a viable member of society because you have a mental health condition. If you're taking care of yourself, you're doing the things you need to do, you have a job, you have responsibilities, all of these things, why are you going to now all of a sudden show up on my doorstep and disappear me into a van just because I have a mental health condition?
I'm worried. I mean, I am famously autistic and dyspraxic and dyslexic, and according to a certain Kennedy brother, that means I've got a lifelong condition, will be a drain on the public purse, and should be given treatment and taken away. I would be a perfect candidate to be picked up in a van and taken away, should I be within that vicinity. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. And then, you've got, and I have to confess, I'm not an expert in eugenics. I've read about it. I've learned things about eugenics, but then what is it that we're trying to build here? Are we trying to build a human race of people who look a certain way, all look a certain way, all behave a certain way, who fit within very specifically, tightly defined categories. And these categories are tightly defined by individuals who believe that only certain people should inhabit the earth. It is
now, hang on. You're now starting to talk about a certain N-word. And we're not talking about the long N-word. We're talking about the short one that has an I at the end. And Nazis and extreme nationalism often lead to the definition of what they consider to be the perfect member of their club.
Well, the thing that I'm referencing more than anything is this whole movement and idea of eugenics. We are all human beings on this earth, and we should celebrate our uniqueness, our differences. We should celebrate those things because that uniqueness and that difference makes life so much richer. And we can each learn from the other person, and we can continue to accomplish things,
right?
And contribute and help and support, and not this whole idea of who has now the privilege of being human and the privilege of humanity.
Right.
And so, I still stand on no apology, no retreat, no shame, no surrender. I still stand on that because I'm more than just a person who has a mental health condition. I am more than the same single story.
We should all be treated as the sum of our parts. And just because one of our parts happens to be that we're disabled in some format, or that we have a mental health issue, or that we have momentary word blindness, or we find adding up numbers particularly taxing,
Mm-hmm.
These should not be the reasons why someone is sidelined, pushed to the curb, or tucked away in a convenient institution where we don't have to dismay people by our presence. We need
Yeah,
to.
yeah, we don't have to
It's,
look at you.
yes, exactly, exactly.
And then in the meantime, because of what happened behind those walls, because individuals who had a mental health condition did not have any power, did not have an audible voice that could be heard, they were then subject to all kinds and all manner of abuses.
Yes, and
And
their liberty taken away from them.
mhm,
It's barely better than a prison, and
right.
on top of their liberty taken away, their body autonomy taken away, which
Mhm,
is a very fashionable thing at the moment. It seems taking away someone's body autonomy, but that meant procedures could take place without their sanction that even their loved ones weren't necessarily party to, that someone could be kept drugged up and unable to make any kind of rational decision for weeks, months, or years.
mhm,
This is a slippery slope we're going down. If we start
exactly.
sanctioning that someone can be taken off to an institution like that, lose their ability to control their destiny, I think we're fully blown into the realms of fascism.
Well, I just want people to be able to be fully themselves and to have the ability to participate in what, to the extent that they can, what is happening to them, to their life, to their person, and have some input into the type of life that they are going to lead.
Right.
Um, that is, and let me also say this: there are people out there, families out there, who have loved ones with a mental health condition,
Yes.
and they are struggling because their primarily adult child is unmedicated, is unhoused, is running around on the street. They want to be able to do something. And it
Right.
is frustrating that that child cannot somehow be forced to take their medication, because that child has rights. That adult has rights. And,
Right.
or that they cannot just gain access to all of their medical information, because again, their child has the right to make that decision of whether that parent sees that information or not, their adult, that adult child.
Right.
And that's scary, and it's messy, and it is also inconvenient. And there are very difficult decisions and choices that have to be made. The
Yes, there are.
response, and they're deeply personal choices and decisions that families have to make.
Right.
But that does not mean that we need to bring back mental health institutions. It also doesn't mean that people who have mental health conditions should not be held responsible for their behavior.
Right.
Um, but the answer is not, we'll just put everybody in a mental health institution. If you have a if you have a mental health condition, just lock them all up.
Well, that appears to be uh, the music of the moment right now. Let's hide them all
Mm-hmm.
away, tuck them all away, so we don't have to be faced with the ugliness of other people's mental health conditions. And I call
Mm-hmm.
upon everybody here to recognize people's humanity, look beyond the condition, and just see them as a collection of parts, one of which might be their mental health situation.
Well, and to expand on that even more, none of us, regardless of who we are, how much money we have, what color we may be, race we may be, where we live, none of that. Each of us, none of us is perfect. Not one of us.
No.
And look, the thing that I would like to urge people is to extend people grace. Stop expecting people to be perfect, because none of us is. And so we need to, I just encourage people to extend others grace and treat people the way that you would like to be treated. If I may even go so far as to say that the first commandment, love thy neighbor as thyself. And so if it is love thy neighbor as thyself, that doesn't just mean someone who lives next door to me. It doesn't just mean people who are in my family or people who are in my group, whatever that group is, or those who go to my church or mosque or synagogue. It doesn't mean that. It means,
anyone you interact with. Anyone you interact with.
Exactly. It means, whether they live even in the United States or they live on a completely different continent in some other part of the world, and we have never met them before that. It is love your neighbor as yourself. And, and just treat people the way that you would like to be treated. Do not just ignore your humanity.
And on that note, I want to thank you so much, Stephanie, for reaching out and trying to not so much put your point across, trying to wake people up to the idea that people are humans first and mental health issues second or even third. The most important thing is to recognize each other's humanity. And until next week, I thank all of you for watching. Keep your feet on the ground. Keep reaching for the stars. And as ever, please try and look after your mental health. Bye-bye now.